The word Andy Roddick used about Alex Eala that nobody actually understood. A 21-year-old who has never won a single WTA title before this month just beat 4 Grand Slam champions and an Olympic gold medalist in the same week, and a former world #1 is telling you exactly why in one word, and almost everybody who heard it got it completely wrong. 9 wins. For losses, that is Alex Eala's career record against top 10 players, and by the end of this video you are going to understand why the second half of that stat, the 4 losses, might actually be the most terrifying part for everyone else on tour. Because there is a hidden pattern buried inside her wins that nobody has laid out in full. A pattern that explains exactly what happens to a great player's brain when she starts losing to a woman ranked 40 spots below her, and once you see it, you cannot watch a Alex Eala match the same way again. Before we get into any of that, if you want the mechanism behind the moments, not just the highlight reel, stick around and subscribe because this channel is going to be covering Eala match by match, round by round, all the way through the US Open. Now let's get into it. Since 1990, according to the Australian Open's own historical database, only 3 women have won more of their first 13 matches against top 10 opposition than Alex Eala has right now. Not 4, not 5, 3 names: Martina Navratilova, Monica Seles, Steffi Graf, 3 of the greatest players who have ever picked up a racket, and Alex Eala's early career trajectory against elite competition currently sits ahead of almost everyone else in the sport since the turn of the 90s. Sit with that for a second because it is not hype, it is a database. And here is the number that makes this month specifically insane. 7 of her 9 wins over top 10 players happened in 2026 alone. 7 in a single season, which multiple outlets confirmed is more top 10 wins than any other player has recorded this year. Tennis journalism has a word it reaches for when a player outside the top 20 beats someone inside the top 10. They call it an upset. Fine. Once, that is an upset. 7 times in one season, that is not an upset anymore. That is a system. And the man who put a name on that system is Andy Roddick. Speaking on his podcast, Served, after watching Eala win her first WTA title, Roddick said this: "She is not scared to play top players. She makes them uncomfortable. They have to be annoyed because they never get the same shot in the same spot at the same speed. She is very good at switching directions." Now, tennis media clipped that and passed it around like a nice compliment from a nice retired guy. It is not a compliment. It is a diagnosis. And here is why it matters that this specific man is the one who said it. Andy Roddick was world #1. He won the US Open in 2003. And he also stood across the net from Roger Federer in 3 separate Wimbledon finals, in 2004, 2005 and 2009, and lost all 3. Roddick had one of the biggest serves the sport has ever seen. He was not outgunned in those finals. He was out something else. He spent years discovering that his best weapons did not land the same way against a player who never let him settle into a rhythm. When Andy Roddick uses the word uncomfortable, he is not being poetic. He lived inside that exact feeling for the better part of a decade. So what did he actually mean? Here is the part almost nobody unpacked. Roddick was not talking about power, and he was not talking about nerves in the vague sense. He said opponents never get the same shot in the same spot at the same speed, and that she is, in his words, very good at redirecting off of pace. Read that again. Most players at the top of the sport win by generating one thing extremely well and repeating it. A predictable, heavy ball that arrives at a height and a rhythm their opponent has grooved their whole life to handle. Eala's whole game, according to the man who has felt this exact problem from the other side of the net, is that she refuses to let anyone find that rhythm. She takes their own pace and sends it back different every single time. That is the theory. Now let's watch what it actually looks like against a real, ranked, decorated human being, because the tournament that made Roddick say this out loud is one of the most stacked single weeks any unseeded player has produced in years. This is the Mubadala Citi DC Open, a WTA 500 event in Washington. Eala walked in ranked 28th in the world, with no seed next to her name. Here is who she walked out having beaten. Round 1, Zheng Qinwen, the reigning Olympic gold medalist and a former world #4. Round 2, Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion of the tournament, on the same court where Fernandez had lifted the trophy the year before. The quarterfinal, Elina Svitolina, the 2nd seed. The semifinal, Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam champion and former world #1. And the final, Jessica Pegula, the top seed, world number 3, chasing her 12th career title. 4 of the biggest names in the sport, one after another in a single week. So let's actually go inside how she did it, because there is a shape to these wins that repeats itself so precisely it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a method. Start with the final. Pegula won the first set 6-4. Clean, controlled, exactly the kind of set a top 3 player is supposed to win. Then rain hit Washington and suspended the match. When it stopped, Pegula was up a set, but here is the detail almost every recap skipped. Eala had already started clawing into the second set before the rain. She was ahead 2-1 when play was called. Everybody went home. Everybody came back the next day. And when the match resumed, Alex Eala did something that should not be statistically possible against the world's 3rd best player. From 4-all in the second set, she reeled off 8 straight games. She won the second set 6-4, and then the third set 6-love, conceding just 8 total points across the entire final set. 8 points against a top 3 player in the biggest match of her life. So ask yourself the actual question here, because this is the whole video in one sentence. Did Alex Eala suddenly become a better tennis player on a Monday afternoon? Or did Jessica Pegula stop being able to do the thing she has built an entire career on? Now go back 1 round to Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion, on the court where she had won the year before. Eala took the first set 6-2, comfortable, controlled. But the second set turned into a war, and it came down to a tiebreak with the crowd fully behind the woman defending her home title. Eala won that tiebreak 7-1. A tiebreak that ends 7-1 is not 2 players trading blows. That is 1 player watching the floor give way beneath the other, in real time, in front of a crowd that wanted the opposite result. And then the semi-final. Naomi Osaka. Final score, 6-4, 6-2. Osaka is one of the cleanest, heaviest ball strikers this sport has ever produced for Grand Slam titles, a former world number 1. But the entire Osaka game runs on one non-negotiable condition. She needs time to set her feet, load the shot, and unload through the ball. Give her that window and almost nobody alive can live with her. Eala never gave her that window. So how do you take time away from a 4-time Grand Slam champion? That is the real question buried in this whole story, and Roddick already gave you the answer without spelling it out. She is left-handed, for one, which means every opponent she has ever faced spent the vast majority of their practice hours reading spin rotating one direction, and then walked out to find it flipped. Add to that a game built entirely around denying rhythm, never giving the same shot at the same speed to the same spot, and you start to understand why 4 different, wildly different players, a heavy topspin grinder, a flat first strike hitter, a controlled clay court mind, all walked off that court having made uncharacteristic errors in bunches. But here is the part that I think is actually more important than any shot she hits, and it is the part hiding inside that 4 in her 9-4 record. Look at the shape of these matches one more time. Against Zheng Qinwen, she lost the first set 4-6 before winning 6-4, 6-1. Against Fernandez, she survived a second set tiebreak after a tense, tightly fought set. Against Pegula in the final itself, she was down a set, went to bed still behind, and came back the next day to win 8 straight games. She was behind or fighting from a dead-even position in nearly every major match of that entire week. And she won every single one of them. That is not luck showing up 3 times. Luck does not repeat a shape. That is a trait, and here is why it is so devastating for whoever is standing across the net. When a normal player builds a lead in tennis, that lead compounds. You break serve, she tightens up, you loosen up, and the gap widens on its own. Every game you win makes the next one slightly easier to win, because your opponent starts believing the deficit is real and permanent. But when you build a lead against Alex Eala, none of that psychological safety arrives. She does not visibly react to the scoreboard. She plays the same way down a set as she does up a set. And slowly, point by point, the player across the net starts to notice that everything she has built for the last 40 minutes has bought her nothing. That is the moment a professional starts rushing. Starts going for a little too much, a little too early, because staying in long neutral rallies clearly is not working the way it is supposed to. That is where the unforced errors actually come from. Not from Eala hitting winners past people, but from opponents losing faith in their own lead. Now, here is where the story gets even more interesting because none of this happened by accident, and it did not happen overnight either. Eala has trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Manacor, Mallorca, since she was 13 years old, a kid who left home on the other side of the world to live and train there. Her coach, Joan Bosch, part of the Academy's coaching staff, has worked with her specifically for roughly the last 3 years, and was in her box for every single one of these wins in Washington. After the Fernandez match, Eala called him her confidant. This is not a story about a sudden breakthrough. This is a story about years of infrastructure finally converging in a single week. And the numbers back up just how significant that week actually was. Eala entered Washington ranked 28th in the world. She left it ranked 20th, a new career high, with 2,106 ranking points, the single biggest points haul of her career. In the race to the WTA Finals, the tournament that decides who plays for the biggest prize of the season, she jumped from 25th position all the way to 14th, with 1,887 points, sitting just 506 points behind the 10th and final qualifying spot. The champion's check for the week was $252,000. And she became the first player in the history of the Philippines, a nation of over 110 million people, to win a WTA Tour singles title. But I want to be honest with you about the part of this story that nobody wants to say out loud, because it is the part that actually matters going forward. This is not a completed arc. It is a beginning of one. Earlier this year at the Australian Open, Alex Eala lost in the very first round to American Alycia Parks, a big serving, fast-striking opponent, despite taking the opening set. That loss matters because if the mechanism we just spent the last several minutes unpacking is real, if it depends on time, on rhythm breaking, on making an opponent sit in uncertainty long enough for the cracks to show, then the most dangerous player for Eala is not the biggest name on tour. It is the player who ends points fast enough that there is no time left to read. Which is exactly why the very next chapter of this story is already written into the schedule. Eala heads straight into the National Bank Open in Toronto, a WTA 1000 event, seeded 25th, freshly minted as a top 20 player for the very first time in her career. And her opening opponent, after a first-round bye, is Alycia Parks, the exact player who beat her in Melbourne. The rematch nobody had to manufacture because the draw did it for us. So here is the actual question hanging over the rest of this season, the one Roddick was circling without quite saying it directly. A one-week run of upsets is a story. A player who can do this over and over against every style, every ranking, every kind of pressure, month after month, that is something else entirely. That is the difference between a great tournament and a great career. Eala has already answered the first question. Whether she can answer the second one is what the next few months, starting in Toronto and running straight through the US Open, are going to tell us. So do one thing before you go. Next time you watch her play, do not just watch the winners. Watch the first set. Watch what she is doing with tempo. Watch which shots she takes early and which patterns she starts repeating on the returns. Because if what Roddick described is real, that first set is not just a set. It is Alex Eala collecting information on exactly how to make the next 2 sets unbearable. Subscribe because we are covering every single round of this, live, match by match, from Toronto all the way to New York, and I promise you, once you understand what to look for, you will never watch her the same way again.